good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and welcome to the webinar number 8. So this is Sanphar Biosecurity Program. Thank you for your presence and time. So our objective is to bring biosecurity closer and alive to your operation. Therefore, biosecurity reinforced and hopefully securing your business continuity. So I like to remind again today the reminder from OIE, and this is in, of course, the context of the One Health. So it goes like strengthening what it matters. It protects animal health from diseases. It protects human health from animal disease that are zoonotic. It protects livelihood of farmers, and it protects the world access to food. So I like the quote here, and I think this program, biosecurity program, is a little contribution to that. So the program we went through and we designed is made of 9 short session webinars, and we kick off the first one in January, and we have basically we are getting closer to the end of the program, and we kick off with, as you can see, with the general aspect of biosecurity. We went through the 5 principles of good biosecurity plan. Then in March, purchase and transport of animal, quarantine period, how to dispose carcasses. In April, feed, water and surrounding of the farm. In May, entrance control and hygiene. Then cleaning and disinfection. And last month, disease management and stocking density. And of course, to achieve that program, we have invited actually the best in class in biosecurity from the veterinary faculty of Ghent University from Belgium, who has been, by the way, nominated just 5 times in a row, right? The best faculty, veterinary faculty in the world. So the Department of Epidemiology is led by Professor Jeroen Dewulf. He will be with us today. Who has spent 20 years in the prevention disease field with focus on application of biosecurity, and he has written a book about that and on the subject, and also the reduction of antibiotic usage. He is assisted by Nele Kakebeke. Since 2017, Nele has been very involved around antimicrobial usage reduction and training, also international public. She's part of the BioCheck team. And Andy Vervat, new to the team, but a good contributor, I would say, from our window to the development of e-learning module and biosecurity. Okay, we will have also Dr. Plamen Nikolov, our field specialist in biosecurity from Vilofoss. Dr. Nikolov brings lots of years of experience, 20 years in animal health, nutrition, biosecurity, and of course with a lot of field experience worldwide. So he will be sharing the application benefit of a pointer disinfectant called Stalosan F as a tool to support your biosecurity plan. So a few words about the organization of this webinar. So we'll spend together about 40 minutes. So we propose first to go through the presentation. During the presentation, you can register your question, and in case we cannot go through all of them, we will put the answer shortly on Sanphar website, Sun Group website. So let's go back to the number 8. number 8 by Professor Jeroen Dewulf. It is about compartmentalization and working lines. So he will bring us how to deal with the order visiting the farms and how to keep disease within the animal group. Okay, so Professor, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Harry, and I will share my screen. Okay, so I will talk today about the compartmentalization and working lines in a farm. And these are, of course, components of the internal biosecurity, and we use these actions, these compartmentalization actions, to reduce the spread of infections. When we talked previously about external biosecurity, we talked a lot about preventing that infections would come into a farm. But of course, there are also always infections that can spread within the farm. So it can go from one part of the stables to another part of the stables, from one age group to another age group. So when we split and to avoid that, to try to reduce that because there's always some infections in a farm, there's some bacteria you can never get rid of, some parasites you can never get rid of, there's always some. And to avoid that they can spread from one side to another, we will first of all separate the farm in two areas, a clean area and a dirty area. And here on this picture you can see this blue line, and also with these grids to clearly separate the clean area inside the farm, and also here where animals are moved from one compartment to another, and the dirty area outside. And we always need to have a very specific and a very clear separation between the two, by means of gates, by means of grids. Within the clean area, that's what we call...
Professor, can you pull your screen, please?
Sorry?
Can you share your screens? Now it's not your screen yet.
It's not my screen yet, sorry, okay. So we have the what I said, the clean area. So here this blue line on the picture is making the distinction between the clean area inside, dirty area outside, and inside here behind these grids we can move animals from one compartment to another, but they still stay within this clean area. So we make a very clear, very obvious distinction between those two areas. So in the clean area, we have a secure zone. It's what we call clean, and so we only use it for internal transport of animals, internal transport of people. The dirty area, that's outside. That's where we have the external visitors, the feed supply, animal traders, and that's the word says itself. It's dirty. It means that it has a higher risk of being positive, of having a certain level of contamination with pathogens. So this is a map of a pig farm in Belgium, where we have made this separation. And so here you see the barn. This is a barn where the stock feed. This is the house of the farmer with the garage where he put his car. This is a parking space for visitors. And this all which is in the gray is in the dirty area. Doesn't mean that it needs to be dirty in terms of it's not well maintained, but it means that it has a certain higher risk. Everything which is in between these dotted lines, I put my laser pen, everything which is in between these dotted lines here, all around the dotted lines, in the dotted lines, that's my clean area. And the dotted lines here on this farm are fences. So it's really very well fenced around. So you cannot walk from the dirty area to the clean area without going through this hygiene lock. And in the hygiene lock, we take the necessary measures to go in. Necessary measures meaning we change footwear, boots, we will change clothes, we will wash our hands, things we talked about in previous webinars. And once we walk into the farm, we can use a certain walking line. So we first go through the hygiene lock, what I mentioned before, and then when we implement walking lines, we always start at the youngest age first. So we always work from young animals towards old animals. That's very important in walking lines go from the young to the older animals. Why is that? Young animals are most susceptible, so we do not want to contaminate them with certain diseases because they're very susceptible. It's like young children, they are most susceptible becoming disease. And young animals are spreading little. They are not yet really infectious. They're not yet spreading a lot of infectious agents. So they will not infect others. So that's why we first go to the young here, the farrowing crates where the new piglets are born. Then secondly, here in this farm, and often we see that we have the sows next to the farrowing crates because they can move easily. So next step is to go to the sows. Then we go to a new zone, the yellow zone. And in the yellow zone, it means that we change clothes, we change footwear, or sometimes in big farms, we work with dedicated people. We work with dedicated people that will stay in specific zones, dedicated people for the farrowing units, dedicated people here for the battery cages where the young piglets from 4 weeks up to 10 weeks are kept. But every time we change from one zone to another, from one color to another, we will, if the same person does it, we will have to change shoes, change clothes, wash your hands. And then next we go to the fattening units where older animals are present. Again, another color zone, again changing clothes, footwear, washing your hands. Later on, at the end of almost end of my working line, I go to the quarantine area. I remember we talked in one of the previous webinars, we talked about quarantine to bring in new animals, so I have to be very careful. We put them in a separate stable, a separate quarantine table, and we will visit that stable only at the end of my working day, because those quarantine animals, they are potentially at risk. So once we visited them, we do not want to go back to our animals because then we could bring in the disease already in our animals in the different stables. So later on, last but not least, we can go to the sick bay, a separate stable again, where we have some diseased animals present. Preferably, we have no sick bay, we have no diseased animals, we have a stringent euthanasia protocol. Many diseased animals, often it's better to go for euthanasia and not to keep them too long. If you have it at the sick bay, it's a one-way ticket. It was mentioned also by Andy in the previous webinar. Animals going to the sick bay, they should never go back. It's a one-way ticket, and then they only later on can go to the slaughterhouse. Last thing in my visit is the carcass storage here at the bottom. It's if I have dead animals, I put them in the carcass storage. Of course, dead animals are the most dangerous. They died for a reason, so likely they are infectious. So we put the dead animals in this carcass, and that's the end of the day. That's the end of the working line. If I want to start again, I have to go back through my hygiene log and I have to do the whole way again. So it may look a little bit as very laborious to follow these lines, but practice tells us that once people get used to these working lines, actually you can do your work faster. You organize your work better, and by organizing it better, it really goes faster, more efficient, and of course, from a biosecurity point of view, much more safe. Okay. So again, the dirty area, that's where I have my parking space. Where visitors can park. It's where I have the feed storage, where the feed trucks come to deliver feed. That should also be in the dirty area. The loading bay of the animals, where the trucks come to load or unload animals, is of course also in the dirty area. The cadaver storage, where dead animals are stored, should also be in the dirty area, because that's where then the truck can come to pick them up if you have a rendering company, or if you do incineration of the cadavers, or everything you do with the cadavers should be done in the dirty area. And manure removal, also the manure, think about manure, it's full of bacteria, viruses, should also go into the dirty area. The clean area, That's where you have the visitors. And so where people have, before they come into the clean area, the farm workers, and so they should announce themselves, and they only can come in if they have authorization to come in. So you should not let everybody come in by itself. There's of course the housing of the animals. That's in the clean area. You have the internal movement of the animals. So, for instance, this is one of the farmers we've guided towards a better biosecurity that created this transport device to move the piglets from one stable to another. It's always very clean, and what is very nice here is also that he keeps the piglets in the same groups. So he will not regroup them, put them all together, and then again. So keeping is something I will come back later on also. It's very wise also for disease spread, but also for welfare of the animals. Otherwise they start to fight again. It's wise to keep them within their same group, within the same family. And sometimes you can put two groups together, but do not start to mix, to mingle them all around. It's not a good idea. It's better to keep them within the same age group. And also, your internal equipment is also in your clean area. And here you already see this equipment in different colors. That's also very interesting to have your dedicated equipment to the dedicated zones. And the red zone is, for instance, the zone of the piglets. Well, you never use red equipment in the zone of the fattening pigs to avoid that through the equipment you can also transport diseases. So working lines, what I mentioned before, always work from the young to the old. The young are the most susceptible and they have little excretion of diseases. The old are more robust. They have a more mature immunity. They can handle disease better, but they spread a lot of infections, or potentially they can spread a lot of infection. So they are more dangerous, and that's why we will visit them only later on in our working lines. So again, to show here this working lines, these different compartments, and then we should talk about measures between compartments. I mentioned before there's three things. Change your foots, your shoes, boots. Change your shoes, change your clothes, and wash your hands. Sometimes we see these disinfection baths in between compartments, but if the disinfection bath looks like this, it's rather an infection bath than a disinfection bath. So be careful. I'm not a big fan of disinfection baths because I see too many mistakes being made with disinfection baths. Very often they are dirty, they are not not frequently enough replaced, and in that case, or the contact time is not long enough. So it's better to really change boots rather than to look at the disinfection bath from a distance or only touch it very, very shortly. It's not going to be enough. These little devices here, the disinfection pumps, we all know them through COVID now, where you see them everywhere. Well, I would advise keep them, and we can use them. We can also use them in the animal stables. It's a good idea when you go into a stable or when you move from one zone to another, just disinfect your hands in between. Your hands, and people often forget, your hands are the most dangerous part of your body. It's with your hands that you will touch animals. It's with your hands that you will touch materials, working tools, and so on. So it's with your hands that you can spread diseases. Putting on gloves can be a good idea as well, but it's not as good as washing your hands, because in the gloves often you have little tears, and you can go, so the glove is not perfect. So better wash your hands and then maybe on top of it put on gloves. Now I can get it started. So here you see the measures taken. I'll put it again. Measures change from one compartment to put out the yellow clothes, go to the next compartment, put on the red clothes, and then in between do this disinfection of your hands. So you see an example of how it can work. It's not that difficult, it's not that expensive, and it's quite important to do. And so here, all these disinfection systems mentioned before to disinfect your hands is a good idea to install. Okay, so that was about my working lines, how I work from young to old. I want to say something about compartmentalization also, to compartmentalize your farm into groups of ages, different ages. We do it for pigs, we do it for cattle. In poultry farms, the best idea is not to have different ages on your farm. If you have multiple stables, make sure you have animals of the same age in the multiple stages. If you have animals of different ages in the different stables, you have to be extra careful not to spread and also use the right working order and not to spread diseases from one stable to another. And this is an example of the mixing of piglets. And often people do that. They have very proliferative sows that get a lot of piglets, too many piglets, and then they start to mix the piglets and they bring them to other sows. And they do it once and they do it twice and they mix again and back and up and front. Sometimes farmers make a hobby out of it. It's not a good idea. So limit the mixing as much as possible. Ideally, don't do it. And why not? Well, assume here, and you see this red sow is maybe a sow that has streptococci. We know streptococci is an important problem in the pig production. If this sow has streptococci, it will contaminate, it will infect some of the piglets. If these piglets then are moved around to the farrowing crates, at the end of the day, all your pigs will be streptococci positive. And this is a little bit an exaggeration, but it's made to make you understand. If we keep the piglets within the same group, at the end of the day, we have much lesser pigs being infected. And so it's a very clear plea not to mix animals too much, to keep them within their same groups, even if they have a little bit of a different weight or different growth capacity, keep them in the same groups. There's plenty of studies that have seen that if you regroup them based on their weight, after some time, at the end of the day, they will grow out of each other again. You will have changes in weights again. And at the end of the day, you will not have gained a lot in homogeneity, but you have lost a lot in disease transmission. So also in cattle production, here we have this system of this housing, this individual housing for the cattle to keep the young animals separated, and once they go into the group housing, also keep the different age groups separated. Here, this picture to the right I've showed you before, and to the left is another picture of movement of pigs from one compartment to another. And by doing so, we keep them in their specific groups, rather than put the pigs all together in the truck or all together in the van and they can mix all over. No, we have made separate, small separate groups also in the truck to make sure that they stay within their, I would say, within their family. And the longer they stay within their family, the more happy they will be, but also the more healthy they will be. Again, also for calves, for young cattle, we have this same idea of putting them in separate housing, individual housing, and not to have them mixed too much to avoid transmission of diseases. Another important thing is never put diseased animals back. If you have a group of pigs growing, and there's one or two pigs that are not growing as fast as the others, they stay behind, and we always have these stay behinds. And then you say, well, okay, they are not big enough to move to the next phase, and maybe they're not big enough to move to the fattening. We will keep them here in the battery stages, and we will bring the new group in there. It's a terrible mistake, because there's a reason why those few pigs do not grow as much as the others, and the reason often is an infectious disease. If we keep them there and we bring new animals in this group where there's a few diseased animals present, they will of course contaminate the rest. So if we have stay behind animals that cannot move to the next group, put them separately. Put them in maybe in the hospital pen or somewhere else, but never bring them back to the previous group, because they're going to contaminate the previous group. Also, this all in, all out principle is very important. When we have a stable and we fill up the stable with pigs, at the end, it should be emptied totally, and all out means 100% empty, not 98%. Is not enough. Like keeping 1 or 2 pigs there because they were not big enough to go to the slaughterhouse yet is a bad idea. It should be all out, fully empty, so that you can do a good cleaning and disinfection in between, and only then start again for the next with the next group. So this all in, all out. Sometimes people say, well, if it's 99% out, it's fine as well. No, it should be 100% out. Separate materials per compartment. I've mentioned that before. We have these different color systems. There's different ways it works with clothing and so on. It's quite easy, and it's very helpful to be able to recognize immediately which material belongs to which compartment, and to avoid that you make mistakes. People can make mistakes, so you have to make it very easy to understand what should be done where. Also, materials should be nicely cleaned. When you do, when you wash the stables, you should not only wash and clean and disinfect the stables. You should also clean and disinfect all the materials that you use. Sometimes those are forgotten about. They do thorough cleaning and disinfection of the stables, but then the materials that you use are forgotten, and they are then the vector, the transmitter of diseases. So that brings me more or less to the end of my presentation, and my take-home message is here that, yeah, separate your farm in clean and dirty areas. Clearly illustrated why that is. And the clean area is the safe zone. In the safe zone, your animals are safe, and dirty area is the dangerous zone. And whenever you go from the danger zone to the safe zone, you have to take precautionary measures. Install clear working lines, and always work from young to old animals. That's an obvious idea. Keep the age groups clearly separated in separate compartments. Take the necessary measures between the compartments. If you go from one compartment to the other, take the necessary measures, and avoid mixing of the age groups. Also a mistake we very often see happening. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'm very happy to take any questions if they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dewulf, for this nice summary of the takeaway. From my windows, let me summarize the topic. Once again, I got the impression that biosecurity is about good management practices in livestock, right? And making sure that clean, in our topic, clean and dirty area are obviously delimited for all, right? Not only by the people working in the farm, but delimited and obviously delimited by all with clear frontier, right? And of course, age group are kept separated throughout the breeding period of the animal. So thank you again. And now let's see, Dr. Nikolov, how Stalosen contribute to the compartmentalization.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harry. Let me share my presentation. So generally, Stalosen can also play a very good role in compartmentalization of the animals. Clean and dirty area is really something very important, which Professor Dewulf mentioned about. And actually cleaning and disinfecting of boots, hands, and also changing the clothes is really a very good idea. But normally people are using liquid disinfectants between the different departments or in front of the farm in the hygiene lock, which have some disadvantages. On the first place, actually, the boots should be extremely clean. because otherwise liquids are not working very well if there is some soiling on the boots. Then low or high temperature can affect the efficacy of liquid disinfectants. And of course, sun rays can also destroy the chemical, the active substance of the liquid disinfectants. With this regards, actually, it is possible to use Stalosan F for a boot disinfection because it have perhaps the most advantage of the product is that it works also in presence of organic materials. So even if you are not able to clean your boots very good, then Stalosan will work again. So it is also, Stalosan can also be used not only in farm gates, but also in front of animal houses. There are also different measures between different compartments. On the first place, when Stalosan is applied to disinfect the boxes, for example, it also goes around and also cover the walk-in paths, which is actually a very good point because it will reduce the incidence of transmitting pathogens from one box to another. Secondly, actually, applying Stalosan in the boxes, it somehow masks the smell of the animals. So it reduces the fighting for making a hierarchy in the box, in the group. And in this way, actually, it reduces the stress and then vulnerability of the animals towards diseases. The other positive thing about Stalosan is that it can be used on the walking path against between different age groups. In this case, actually, we can ensure much more better disinfection and better prevention of transmitting of pathogens between the age groups. About that, we have already some practical experience coming from China. We have been reported about the pig farm, fattening pig farm in China with 2 barns, which was actually infected with African swine fever. And for 15 days, all 145 piglets died. Then both barns enrolled were treated with Stalosan F, then disinfected only the barns with caustic soda and washed later on. Actually, the ground around the barns is treated only with Stalosan F twice, and once just before the placement of the new piglets. And when they start with the new piglets, a month later, piglets was in a very good health. That shows that actually Stalosan can be used effectively against transmission of different pathogens. And in this case, actually African swine fever, because you know that it is not possible to contain the virus only in the barns. It always goes around the barns. So this is a kind of very good example of how Stalosan works, and I hope it will contribute better to your knowledge about biosecurity. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Plamen, for sharing, especially the case of ASF, as it is, we are still in Asia suffering from it. So and I would like to stay with you, Plamen, because to go through the first question that we have here. Is there any data available from the Stalosan F efficacy as a boot disinfection?
Yes, actually, we have a very good test made by University of Minnesota against PRRS virus. And actually, it was made without our knowledge. So it really have a very high value for us because actually we didn't know that somebody is testing Stalosan efficacy on the boots. And the best in this case actually is that Stalosan was also used in a very soiled boots together with manure. So it shows a very good efficacy in presence of organic material.
Okay, so
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Plamen. So let's stay on the subject of Stalosan. There are question about practical things here. What is the contact time for the for efficient Stalosan disinfection?
Well, similar to the other disinfectants, actually, Stalosan have a different contact time for different pathogens. For viruses, we have actually many tests showing that Stalosan is effective within 5 to 10 minutes. For bacteria, 30 minutes is enough time, contact time, to have a very good efficacy. But for fungi, it takes a bit longer time, like 8 hours to 24 hours. But we should keep in mind that actually Stalosan works for a very long period of time, like 1 week. So I think 24 hours would be the best contact time of animals with Stalosan to have the optimal effect.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Plamen. So let move to Professor Dewulf. So we have a few questions for you also, Professor. If few animals become sick in clean animal area compartment, how to recover a clean zone status, if that is the method?
Yeah, well, that depends, of course, a little bit on which disease we're talking about. So if it's a very, would say, dangerous disease like African swine fever, then the only way to get rid of it is really to empty the entire compartment and to fully clean and disinfect the entire compartment, and only then you can get it recovered to be clean. If we're only talking about endemic diseases, some bacterial infections, you can treat the diseased animals in there and still consider it to be a clean zone. So, of course, even within our clean zone, we have to accept that some pathogens will be present. We will always have some E. coli, we will always have some streptococci present, we will always have some coccidiosis present even. The only point is that we need to limit the infection pressure. We cannot go to zero. So sometimes we will need to treat the animals. But then we will consider the compartment being still part of the clean zone. So it will really depend on which disease we're talking about. If it's a very severe disease, so you have to fully empty and disinfect, actually.
Thank you, Professor. So let's go back to Plamen, Dr. Nikolov. Can we use Stalosan F to control resistant pathogen?
Yes, actually, this is one of the most advanced benefits of Stalosan F. It is capable, it does not make any difference between resistant and non-resistant pathogens. And actually, it does not contain chemicals, so it is difficult to build up a resistance against Stalosan F. So it works all the time, very effectively. It doesn't matter if the pathogens are resistant or non-resistant to, to antibiotics, of course.
Okay. Okay, very clear, Plamen, thank you. A question for you, Professor. Is the distance between broiler house contributing in controlling disease spread?
Yes, that's a good question, and the answer is yes, it is. I mean, some diseases can be spread airborne, and if we talk about airborne transmission, often we talk about viruses, and these viruses are carried. And so the virus as such is not being transmitted, but it is carried either by dust particles or by air drops. That's also with the current COVID. And when we talk about 1 meter or 1.5 meter distance, and that is because these little aerosols, these little water droplets coming out of our nose or mouth, is traveling some distance, and then it falls down. And on these water droplets, you have the disease, you have the viruses being present. Also in stables, you can have that. So you can have dust coming out of the stable. You can have, of course, also aerosols coming out of the stable, especially if you do the cleaning with high pressure. You create a lot of aerosols. and then it's flowing out of the stable, and the closer your next neighbor is, the higher the probability that some pathogens will go to the stable next door. So the farther away, the better, the safer it is. That's why also when I mentioned if you have different broiler houses next to each other, it's ideal to have animals of the same age in the different broiler houses, so that your filling up and then your emptying happens on the same moment, and that you do not do the cleaning and disinfection while in the stable next door there are still animals present. So, but the further away you can have your stables, the better it is. Some diseases will travel 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters, but sometimes it can even go up to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 meters. So it will also depend on the climate conditions, the amount of sunshine, the temperature. If it's very cold, it can travel longer. So the freezer is a good way to maintain viruses. So if it's very cold, you can have them very long time and they can travel longer. If it's very hot, the viruses will be killed off. But then if you're very humid, like in several parts of Asia where it's hot and humid together, that's again an ideal condition for bacteria, for viruses to survive in the environment.
Thank you, Professor. And you know, we're listening to you, and I understand the whole passion that you have around biosecurity, and you want to make sure that we go back to our farm with an exhaustive view of the issue, of the question. So thanks a lot. May I ask you a short version answer of a question that looks also important? Maybe you have gone through during your presentation. Does it make sense to have dedicated staff by clean, dirty areas?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. It makes sense. So if you have dedicated staff going to one area, they cannot then transmit the pathogens to other areas, to other stables next door. So it really makes sense. So if you have on big farms where you have a lot of staff, it's a good idea to dedicate staff to one space, and then they are not allowed to go to the other areas.
Thank you, Professor. So that would be the conclusion of our presentation today, our topic. Thank you for your time, all of you. See you next month for, sadly, the last rendezvous with Dr. Nele Kakebeke for the last session then. Nele will actually give us a demo of the BioCheck tool and how to use it and what is the benefit. So thank you and bye from now.
Bye.